What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Marshall, and it is my goal with each episode of this podcast to share the stories, strategies, tactics, tools, and resources that will help you establish or grow your martial arts school. The Black Belt Business Podcast is brought to you by Easton.Online. You can find all of our digital courses, martial arts curriculums, and resources designed to help you enhance your business at Easton.Online. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Casey, my brother, it was good to see you the other weekend, man. How are you?
Man, I'm always living the dream. I teach Jiu Jitsu for a living. Come on.
That's it. I feel you, baby. I feel you. And man, holy shit, the trials, that was by far the best Jiu Jitsu tournament I have ever been to in my entire life.
Same. I love it, man. The format's great. It fits with our team style very well. I mean, all of them showed out. I'm really happy with what happened there.
Yeah, it was a great tournament. I think all jiu-jitsu tournaments have to turn to that, like how they had like the wrestling style. Like there was a board, and it was like your name came up on the board, and that's what mat you were going to, and you weren't gonna like stay on the like. It just made the tournament flow so well. I thought they did a great job with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like business, you know. If you're organized and you have like a game plan and an idea and a strong mission statement, what are you trying to accomplish? We're trying to control the flow. We're trying to make it as painless as possible. I mean, wrestling tournaments have it down. You know, they run so many. They've been doing it for so long. I think jiu-jitsu would be better served to adopt the wrestling style format as far as like match trackers and stuff like that. Like it was really easy.
And then just the level of it too was ridiculous, right? Like everywhere you turned, you were like, yo, fire match there, fire match there. You know, it was insane. It was insane.
That was two days of crazy jiu-jitsu overload. I got out of there, and the next Monday I was like, I just want to decompress.
Bro, I had to go to the Pan Americans on Wednesday of that week.
Oh, shit.
So for me, I went to a great tournament to a boring ass tournament.
Oh yeah. First grip point. Go.
Yeah. So anyway, man. So tell everyone your journey a little bit. Like, so you start jiu-jitsu, and then at some point, like you want to make a living with it, right? And so what has your journey through jiu-jitsu been like? Like, when did you start? What got you into it? And then when did the focus switch? Switch.
That's a good question. And, you know, one that I get asked a lot. And I have the typical boring canned response. I'm an 80s kid. I started wrestling when I was 7 years old. So grappling was always like a love of mine. And then I started doing karate in the 80s, like strip mall karate, real
we all did.
And then in high school, I got into a lot of trouble. So I had like a deviated path from like the natural athlete perspective. So I got into some trouble. Ended up doing a little bit of time as a kid, and then got out, started a family, and I got into jiu-jitsu a little bit late, right? I was looking to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And one thing that became apparent very quick, I wanted to fight MMA, right? I had a failed MMA career. And I found that my mood wouldn't go up or down on wins and losses for me. So, like I would win and I wouldn't be excited. I'm just like, man, I want to go home. I just want to be with the family. And I would lose and I wouldn't get depressed about it. And one of my teammates, yeah, it was just weird, you know. And yeah. I knew one of my teammates asked me to corner him, and it was at Long Beach Fight Night back in the day. And I cornered him, and when he won, the feeling of accomplishment, like helping him get ready for that fight, watching a teammate win. I noticed at that point that I was more in the service field of the sport than in the competitor field of the sport.
How old were you at that point?
I was in my 30s. Okay. Yeah, like early 30s. I had a lot of fight left in me. You know, I could have done more with my career than I did. But it was like I felt like I needed the needle to move, and so when I realized service was like what I needed to do. I just started coaching, and it just naturally fit with me. And then it became, I've had 2 Fortune 500 company jobs in my life. And, one of them, the last one that I had was an oil major in LA, and I was making ridiculous amount of money. And it was just killing me. It was killing me inside. And it taught me a lot about business, but also I was looking at the guys that were in their 60s, and I was looking at my future. I was like, this is going to be me if I keep doing this. And it was around this time that I started coaching more. I ended up picking up Tony Ferguson, Mark Munoz, a couple of like real big hitters. And I was like, damn, like this is probably something I can do for a living.
Were you 10th planet? Always 10th planet?
No, I wasn't. It was funny because I was actually talking to one of Richie's students, Boogeyman, from 10th Planet San Diego. Before I was 10th Planet, Richie would get on a train and come up to Orange County and train with me. We were sub-tech MMA. Before me going over to 10th Planet, I was already working with Boogie. So that's kind of how the 10th Planet thing started with me. And then I was just seeking out information from everybody. That's what I was doing. And so I would make the trip out to Hollywood to train with Eddie. And then, of course, like Eddie's brain, he's not bound by tradition completely. He's willing to innovate and scrap techniques that are like outdated and not working anymore. And he's willing to kind of reinvent the wheel to stay relevant. And I was just like, wow, this is really for me. And so I was working for this oil major in LA.
I would say he's the first one that did that. And you're seeing it more now, but he's definitely the first one that was like, you know what? Like, from our generation, I'm sure the Gracies had to do that as they were learning, but there became these rules with it. And now you're really seeing the evolution of jiu-jitsu again, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I would even go back just one step further. Jean-Jacques Machado, because of his hand, he had to play overhooks and underhooks and couldn't really rely on the grips. So he had to do things different in order to be effective. So Eddie coming up with Jean-Jacques, I believe that was like a perfect marriage of an instructor who's like, yeah, man, like do it your way. I remember asking Eddie, what do you think about this technique? And he was like, well, does it work for you? And I was like, yeah, it works for me. And he's like, well, then it's good. And then I started training with Jean-Jacques too. And then I asked Jean-Jacques a similar question, and he had the same exact answer. He was like, well, are you having success with it? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, then it's good. And I kind of took that, and that's what really excited me is getting Jean-Jacques and Eddie in my life, and all the possibilities that jiu-jitsu could be, instead of being bound by very strict tradition. Nope, this is the only way to do that. When I met him, I just realized that, wow, not only is jiu-jitsu limitless, but the potential of learning and living a life through jiu-jitsu was limitless. And then about 7 years ago, I decided to retire from the oil major and move to Vegas, and the rest is history since then. I've just been, for the last like 10 years, I've been operating and running my own schools.
Right. So you go over to 10th Planet at that point, and you opened how many schools? One, or did you open multiple right away?
The first one I opened up was 10th Planet Costa Mesa. And then very quickly, I have this like weird philosophy that's different from most people. Okay. I want to open the smallest gym possible with the smallest nut possible. And I want to put the maximum amount of people in there as possible. And then when we become 20%
margins
big to manage, then I do a demographic study on my own business. And I find 20% of the zip codes, and I go, okay, I got people, I've got 20% of my people are living in Buena Park. So I'm going to go open a small gym in Buena Park and then blow that up. And then when it got unmanageable, then I was like, okay, let me do another zip code study. Oh, okay, we got a bunch of people that live in the city of Orange. So then I'll go open a gym up in the city of Orange and cannibalize off my own business, and then keep just building and building and building. I ended up with Orange, Buena Park, which became Fullerton, Costa Mesa, Irvine, and then Classic Fight Team, all in Orange County. And then I moved to Vegas, opened up 10th Planet Vegas, 10th Planet Downtown, and then Tucson.
Okay. So hold on. I want to understand this again. So, and just for some people to understand some numbers here, right? So you said you opened the smallest gym with the smallest nut possible.
Yes.
Okay. Do you teach at it, or do you hire someone to teach at it? The first one you taught at?
Yeah, I taught at it. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I was him at night, and then my partner Ron Turner was teaching in the mornings.
Okay. So when you said you got to 20% margins, is that what you said?
Yeah, like when we got 20% too big for the space. So
Too
let's
big
say
for the space. Okay.
yeah, so the space can take, let's say it was 1,400 square feet from wall to wall. I'm talking like,
Tiny.
yeah, tiny. And we ended up blowing out all the walls, and you walked in and there was only 6 inches from the front door to the mat. And the whole gym was mats except for the bathroom. And there was
So
like
a 1,000 feet of mat.
yeah, it's like 1,000 feet of mat. And we were getting like 60 people a class in there.
Okay.
So, I
At
mean,
that point, you have to say more.
yeah. So when you have to do groups of 3 instead of groups of 2,
It's a problem.
you know, you need to say more, right?
Yeah.
So instead of moving into a 10,000 square foot facility and increasing my nut by 10, I ended up just opening up one in Buena Park, like another 1,000 square feet school. And so, because for me, I'm always looking for like a work-life balance too, right? So I want to make sure that like I'm not stressing on money and that I can pay my guys. And part of my corporate background was always talent development. So I missed out on a giant promotion in corporate America because my direct report, the guy below me, wasn't ready to take my job. So I was qualified for the job that I wanted, but my boss was like, "Hey, we got to go to Texas and get this guy in here because if we lose you, no one's ready to replace you." And that just burned into my brain. And I realized that I should never be held back because I didn't develop the talent behind me. So I took that into jiu-jitsu right away. Like when I went to Costa Mesa immediately, there's a kid, his name is Budo Matt on Instagram. He owns 10th Planet Mission Viejo now. He's my first white to black belt that I ever promoted all the way up.
Okay.
The day he came into the gym, I was like, before he even signed up with me, I looked at him, the way that he walked, the way that he talked, the way that he moved, and he had jiu-jitsu background. He was just still a white belt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "You're going to run this for me one day." And then I just basically put all my money into him. And then he ended up becoming a black belt like 10 years later. And now he's got his own school and he's thriving. He's killing it. 10th Planet Mission Viejo. But that's how I did things. I just always developed guys. I would ask them if, "Hey, do you guys have any debt?" They say yes. I'd say, "List it for me." I'd bring them in on a Friday and write them a check and just pay it off for them. And then just say, "Now you can work for me. You have no debt. Let's live lean. Let's not get too extravagant. Let's just get our black belts and grind and compete, make it happen." And then that's how I was able to just keep opening. And the thing when you open a lot of gyms is you lose culture. And culture is my number one mission statement for any of my gyms. So it was very important that everybody that I replicated the gyms with was homegrown.
Man, it's such a hard thing, but it's like you touch on some really big things there. First, I want to talk about your lesson in corporate America, but it's the lesson that we have as well with our schools is I can't move you up if your current job is going to go to shit. So even as low as the intro class teacher, for example, right? If you teach a phenomenal intro class and now you want to become a regular class instructor, well, you have to train the next intro class teacher because you teach intro classes better than me now, right? Like I don't want to train them. You do it better. So you teach that guy how to do it and do your job. And then at the same time, learn the next job.
100%. And here's the other thing. My number one instructor that I have, you saw him, he made it to the finals at ADCC, Andy Varela. He's my number one guy. Here's a fun fact. Budo Matt, the guy that's running 10th Planet Mission Viejo, and Andy Varela are my only coaches, students that have never asked me for a raise. In all these years, they've never had to ask me for a raise. Why? They force me to give them the raise. They perform at a level above the level that they should be performing at.
And you're not talking about Andy and his competition level.
No, I'm talking about the way he runs the school.
Right.
Like he packs this gym at night. It's insane. Like his energy level and Budo Matt was the same way. And it's like, so going into that, like you have to prepare your replacement always. Right. it's like, it's so important that we develop the culture where everybody's trying to push up. Everybody that's trying to be part of it is trying to push up, but not in an undermining way, in a way where like everybody's just trying to succeed.
How do you do that?
Well, first of all, like whenever I bring a guy on as an instructor, like very young, like I have a kid, he's a blue belt. His name is Spencer Ortiz. He made it to the 16 at ADCC trials. Like he gunned down a couple of big name guys and like took their back, strangled them. Like he's good. He's like the next guy that I have in line. And it all starts with the culture and developing him in a way where like I'm trying to get him to act above his age in the gym. And it's just constant communication and making sure that he's living the right life and moving the right way. And I tell them at a very young age when he's a blue belt, I'm like, listen, man, if you don't have a terrible divorce, you don't start having kids out of marriage, you don't start getting into incredible debt, and you live lean and you suck it up for 5 or 6 years with me, at some point I will invest in you and open a gym for you. And that's been my business model is, so we open a gym, I spend all the money, you do all the work. When I get my initial investment back, I relinquish most of the percentages to you, and then I keep a small portion of the gym in perpetuity.
And you're paying him the whole time, though. It's not like he's not getting paid while doing it. That's
no,
part of
not,
yeah.
It's not sweat equity at all. It's
right.
just I'm gonna open you the gym. So like he's gonna work for me and get paid, but eventually he's gonna say, hey, I want to move to Boise, Idaho. And then I'll go open him a gym in Boise, and then I'll pay all of it. That's really how that's the benefit. Like you just have a job, but if you do it right and you do it well, eventually I'm going to put you in a position where you can live the dream too, because as a coach, that's all you want.
Right. It's very hard, right? Because that's all I want. Like, I just want you to live the dream, whatever that dream is. Even if that dream changes from jiu-jitsu, that's okay. I just want you to live the dream. And because somebody showed me the dream, right? Like, and that's all.
It's insane, man. Like I just, for me, like this is like a life thing for me. But so I always say, I tell all my students this, I want you to leave something you love, to go do something you love, to return to something you love, back to do something you love, in this infinite circle of just living this great life. And I'm fortunate enough that all of my children are healthy and they're all really cool. And I love being around them. I never feel the desire to get away from my kids. I'm compelled to go home and spend time with my wife. I love her. I mean, like, if I could spend time with anybody, it'd be with her and my kids, right? And then when I do leave them, I leave them for my passion and what I love to do. It's this insane ease of life, and it's fruitful. And there's no one ever, I mean, people say life's got to be hard, like you got to get your hands dirty, you got to put in the work, but there's no reason you should be miserable. Like, you can create the right kind of life if you have the right perspective. You know, you finding someone, a partner that buys in. Like, my wife buys in, and then my students buy into the culture of the gym, and it just works. And now it's at the point where it's just easy. It's weird. It's really weird.
It's very interesting how it gets there. When you look, this is just business people that listen to this, people that own schools. So when you open a gym, right, and you say you're going to eat all of the expense to start, what are you paying that person, for example, when you first start that school?
The same wage that he would make working for me. So the way that it works is, like, let's just call guy Steve. He's been working with me for 7 years. He just got his black belt. Hey, I want to move to Concord, California, and I want to open a gym. So I'll call Eddie, right? And I'll say, like, hey, Eddie, I want to open a gym with so-and-so. And he's like, all right, go ahead. You got the green light, go. My wife's an attorney, so she immediately sets up the corporation, get everything all set up. And then I kind of walk Steve through the process. And then I'm not afraid to spend money. I'm not afraid to invest in people. And you got to remember, I've been betting you for 7 years. I know everything about you. So then we engage in this business. I take all the risk because I care about all the work you've done for me over the years, right? So I put up all the money, And then only two things are getting paid. You're getting a living wage. Steve gets a living wage. And
what do
then
you call a living wage is my question.
I would say, well, you're going to have to, like, when you first open a business, like, you don't take a lot of money.
Right.
But I would say like 30 grand.
Right.
I would say that's reasonable at first, like you might have to get, like, when I opened my first gym, I didn't take money for 3 years.
Right.
I reinvested. I had a full-time job, but I would say the target would be 30-35 grand probably, and then
That's not where we start too.
Yeah, you're going to have to hustle privates, and you might have to get a bartending gig at night on the weekends to make ends meet. But if it comes too easy, you're not going to appreciate it anyway, So then my nut gets paid off. So I'm 51, you're 49. My nut gets paid off. And once you and I can see eye to eye, I'm all the way out. I got all my initial investment out. You and I are eye to eye. I'll go down to 80-20. I'll go down to 80-20 and I'll just take a small residual in perpetuity, and be there as guidance. That was my initial retirement.
Do you go 80-20 on just the profits or the ownership of the school as well?
Well, I'll go 80-20 on the ownership. That's something my wife hates. Actually, giving away equity is not really.
I'm sure she does.
but I believe in order to get somebody to really show the ownership, if someone calls you at 4 a.m. drunk and they want to sign up, you got to be willing to get up and sign them up. And if you're a minority shareholder in the company, you're going to have a hard time doing that. You're going to send it to voicemail. But if you're a majority share owner of the company, you're going to get up and take that call and get that money. And so I find that when people have more skin in the game, they're going to work harder, and I wouldn't.
Your wife asks you this question. I want to ask you this question. You can give them the profits. Why do you have to give them the equity?
Because I don't want employees. I want owners. I want you to operate as if your life depends on it. And we all know, you see it all the time. You're only as loyal as the money that you're making. So what's to stop you from giving my number one guy more than I pay him and him just jumping ship and leaving? But if he owns 80% of the company, that's his. He's vested, completely vested in the company. But I've been going against conventional corporate wisdom since the beginning. Like small gyms, you've been to my old Henderson gym. You saw how small that place was. And that was 100% pure profit. I never not profited on that gym. That gym cost me $2,000 a month. And on my very first day of opening, I had 75 students. Like before I even unlocked the door, I had 75 signups. So we were profitable in Vegas day one. But if I would have opened a 20,000 square foot facility, I would have been bleeding cash for the first 2 or 3 years until I filled it up, Yep. And so, but that goes against like big corporate America would think I'm doing it wrong. But I also factor stress and work-life balance that's a huge factor into my lifestyle and my businesses. Like if I'm stressing on $20,000 a month overhead, that's no good. I'd rather keep my overhead low and my profits high and pay my employees more. Like during COVID, not one of my employees, not one of my lenders, not one of my property managers didn't get paid. I paid everybody through the whole thing. Never, we didn't miss one payment on anything because I operate on such a low overhead that we have like the cash flow to kind of, like, I didn't know how long we were going to be locked down. No one did, and luckily I was very conservative in my approach because we just made it easily through it.
Right. It seems very important to you that you have the structure set up. Like when you say the vetting of the person for the last 5 years, and that's but you don't leave them. I think this is a big thing that people do sometimes is they go, oh, you're going to teach. Okay. You teach, I'm out. Right. And the person feels alone. And then they feel like, oh man, all I do is all this work for Casey. How do you avoid that problem?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because I'm currently struggling with that right now. You know how it is. I've been in there day and night, 6 a.m., 11 a.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. My 7-year-old's a competitive golfer now. And so like I'm caddying for her on the weekends, and I got to go take her to golf during the day. And you know, I'm finding that this fatherhood thing with my 19-year-old, she's a wrestler in college. I made her train. So I never felt guilty about being in the gym, because it was like, come on, Abigail, we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, all right, Dad, let's go. So she's been taking adult classes since she was 10. So I always had her with me, and I never felt guilty. But my 7-year-old has zero interest in training. Zero. She just wants to golf every day. So I'm feeling this pull away from the gym. Luckily for me, in my business statement, jiu-jitsu was always the fourth thing that I was teaching, right? My competitive background's not that great. Vinny Magalesh lives right down the street. Robert Drysdale's right down the street. If I'm selling only jiu-jitsu, I'm bound to fail, right? So culture, number one, that was the number one thing in my mission statement. Culture, self-defense, health and fitness, jiu-jitsu, number 4. So building the culture, my guys know how to do it without me. And so the struggle is not like, do they feel like I'm leaving them? No, because I support them 100%. But I feel this compulsion to be in 2 places at once. But luckily for me, they all buy in and they understand what's going on, you know, and I pop in at night here and there, you know, and but I'm currently struggling with that right now. But
I feel you too, because my kids love ball sports. You know, my kids love basketball, and I'm in the same boat. I'm like, God damn it. All right. And I'm not, God damn it. It's a great problem to have, but you feel it, right? You're like, I want to go watch my kid, but my classes, and because you feel a big pull towards the students, even just the students, like you feel a major pull towards. So yeah, well, maybe we'll help each other with this problem, but I don't know what to do either. It's hard on the heart, right?
Yeah, it's super hard. But the thing is, you got to rest assured that you developed your number 2 guy to a number 1 guy. Honestly, I hate to say this, right? But if I were to pass away tomorrow, this gym wouldn't miss a beat.
Nothing.
It would be fine.
Right.
My wife knows how to run the business end of it. Pat, the guy that I have that runs the desk for me, he knows everything ins and outs. And then Andy would be able to take over for me seamlessly. Maybe even, who knows? You know, he's really good. And he's young. You know, I'm a little bit less fiery these days. I'm more mellow, more technical, and you know, he's the leader who's leading from the front, and you know, that goes far, you know.
I agree. It's very interesting when that happens, when you're like, wow, this doesn't need me anymore. Right? It's like your kid. Like, I mean, like they need you, right? But like you've made it so that it's totally self-sustaining.
Yep. It's kind of, it hurts the ego just a tad. But you know, then there's another saying that I tell my students all the time is like, if I tap you, it's because I'm good at jiu-jitsu. If you tap me, it's because I'm good at coaching.
Right.
I can't lose in my life.
Look, let's be clear with it. What you're speaking about, Andy. If Andy's not tapping you, you fucked up as a teacher, right? Like he's young, he's a killer, trains every day. Same thing with I can do like a round sometimes with my killers. Yeah, there's the stick.
I have not sniffed well, actually, I had him in a head and arm briefly, but it's been 3 years since I've even sniffed a submission on that kid.
Yeah. Good job.
I mean, yeah, right?
Yeah, good job. That's your job, right? Like if you can't make a young, athletic, hungry person better than you, you are not a good teacher. Like, I don't know what to say. Unless you're a phenom, you know, like maybe nobody will be better than Hajer at Hajer's school because, you know, he's the best that we've ever seen do it. So.
It's crazy because I use the Laker analogy. I'm the Lakers, right? So imagine when I was growing up, it was Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Showtime.
Right.
And then they had Kobe and Shaq Lakers, right? Crazy. But in between those two, they had Sedell 3 and Eldon Campbell. And they were not good in between those two teams. But every time the Celtics came to the Forum, the Celtics were acting like they were playing Kareem and Magic, but it was really Eldon Campbell and Sedell 3. And so now that's kind of how I am. Like, people think that I'm the Lakers, but I'm just like the shitty Lakers. And it's like, yeah, I know it means something to tap me in my gym, but you ain't tapping Shaq and Kobe. You're tapping Sedell 3 and Eldon Campbell. Not to be disrespectful, but
no, sure, I totally understand. What 100?
it's like I'm a shell of myself.
Man, look, just as we start to wrap here, a quick question: like the current state of jiu-jitsu, the technique is very high. It's very high, and I think that has been a good part of the growth. A little bit in our schools, though, our schools aren't made of just competitors, right? Our schools are mostly made of, like you said, people coming in that help jiu-jitsu like better your life, right? Self-defense, health, and fitness. How do you do with the young, with some of the people when they get on the internet and they see the negativity of some of the shit talk and some of the things that go on in with the jiu-jitsu culture on the competition end a little bit? How do you reconcile that in the school?
Well, I mean, my fighters that I have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it starts at the top. You'll never hear me saying anything negative about anybody online. So
Right.
it's like the OnlyFans argument, right? Like, should you or shouldn't you do OnlyFans? Well, I mean, you can make a lot of money doing that, but you're taking the easiest, less taxing possible road to make money, and you're selling yourself with it, right? So like, we talk about it like, hey, we should win this fight. This is a good fight for you. Oh, I'm going to do a crazy call out after the fight. And I'm like, no. I'm like, when they're asking you who you want next, you say, my job is to win fights. My job is to say yes. My coaches and my management and Dana or Sean or Mick, they're responsible for setting the matchups up. Like, I'm just here trying to knock the people out that are in front of me. And that's kind of the approach. Like, you don't see Andy talking a lot of shit online. And it's just like, I want you to, the whole Barry Sanders, like, you score a touchdown, run the ball to the referee, act like you've done it before. This is what we train for. We don't want to act surprised and shocked. So I think from the top down in my academy, and I mean, this goes back to Mark Munoz. He's never said anything negative about a man in his life,
Right.
And it's just like, we just want to look like we've been there before. And when we go into a competition, we want to look like we were expected to win going into it. And we train to win. And I will call you out. Like, if you're my student and you're talking shit online, I'm going to tell you that's unbecoming of our team. And I don't want you to do it,
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like you brought up the OnlyFans thing. I personally don't like to see the OnlyFans rash guard in the school. I ask people to take it off most of the time, because I'm like, man, that's, for the most part, it's a porn site.
Yeah.
And I don't want, like, and no, like, do your thing, but like, that's not what we do here. That's for me, that's not what we do here.
I'm a girl dad. I have 3 daughters. Right. So it's like, for me, it's just like, I mean, go do what you want to do. Like, that's fine. I'm not against you doing whatever you want to do, but if you're my daughters and you're doing that, you're getting in big trouble. Like, we're having problems, and I want everybody to use their intellect. I want everybody to use their skill and develop something about you that you can use to make money. And I just think that's like the easiest, laziest way to do it. I mean, without really on a side tangent,
Sure. No, I agree with you. Man, when you dream like really big, and you might just be there already, like, do you want anything different for the school?
Well, one thing for the school, I mean, eventually, I've always lived in like very, very expensive real estate areas, right? But before I ever opened a gym, I mentored with a Taekwondo instructor who was, you talk about making money, those guys know how to make money. And their whole process is buy the building, sell the business to your number 1 student, and have them pay your mortgage on the building, right? So real estate ownership is like the number 1 goal for me is like, eventually I want to own a couple of the buildings that my gyms are in, like outright. And I live in Vegas, pretty expensive property, commercial real estate. And of course, California is just insane. You know, you need millions to do that. So like in the future, that's kind of what I want to do, like get a standalone building somewhere that's not in a strip mall and just kind of own that. Because I think that's how you build generational wealth, you know?
Yeah, for sure. That's that is where we are for sure.
You know, since this is a business podcast, I have like a really cool thing that I've been working on, and it's like, so like cash right now, because of inflation, it's pretty crazy to spend cash because your cash is worth less, right?
Right.
So I would challenge all your listeners to find a way to use debt to make monthly income. So let the bank carry the note and then make cash on the bank taking the risk. And so challenge your brain to think along those lines. And like, because we have, like, anybody that's listening to this probably owns a gym. They probably own like a property or real estate, right? So you have an appreciating asset in real estate that's gonna make you money long, real estate. And then you have a cash flow positive business, which is your gym, right? So those are two of the biggest factors in becoming wealthy. Now think about this. With inflation being so high, it's actually a bad time to use your cash to invest in somebody because inflation's so high. But what if you could find some way to get the bank to loan you money where you can make a cash positive business while they hold the note? That's kind of where my brain's working right now. And I have like a couple of things on deck. And so I'm looking at like having the bank take all the risk and then me just getting all the cash rewards.
How does the bank take all the risk though, right? Because you still have to take out the debt, right? You still have to take out the note. You just have to make the payment.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But don't use cash to do it though. That's the hard thing. So let's say you wanted to do rentals. Like, how can you do rentals without spending your cash? That's the thing. And with the interest rates on houses so high, you can't refinance right now because you'll get in a worse mortgage than you were.
Right. So what you're saying is, how do you, without coming with 20 or 30% cash down, how do you do it?
Yeah. That's where my brain's at right now. I got a couple of really cool things. I'll talk to you offline. I'll give you ideas, but I would challenge everybody to start thinking in those lines. I have a friend who's really good at business, and he posed this question to me a couple of months ago. And he was like, when inflation is high, it's really important to use debt. And I didn't really understand it at first. I was like, what do you mean? If inflation is high and I'm using debt, wouldn't I want to pay cash for something when inflation is high? But you're overpaying for everything, right? So you want the bank to take the risk. And he's really challenged me, and it's crazy what you can come up with.
Yeah, man, I've gotten quiet because I started to think about it, because like I know that cash is devalued with high inflation, but how would you get a loan with no cash? That's the question.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's kind of scary to take like hard money loans right now and do that kind of stuff. But like, you have to get real creative, and you have to have a lot of balls right now.
Right.
It's really like, either way the market swings, there's always an opportunity there, and
it's not conventional.
Yeah, it's not conventional. You got to do outside of the box thinking. And I'm so happy that I got this kid in my life. He challenges me. He just says like 2 or 3 words and walks away. And I'm like, shit. And then I spend like the whole night thinking about it. But I'm on to one idea. I don't want to leak it yet.
All right.
Just because I don't have it like completely fleshed out, but sure. I'm already doing it. And I'll tell you offline. That way you could, if you wanted to do it.
I want to hear about it. Yes.
But once I get it all squared away, I'm gonna like start talking more about it.
Cool. Last question, man. When you're looking back at your history here, over 10 years of running schools, 10 years, obviously we've all made massive mistakes along the way. What advice would you give to somebody like including some of the mistakes that you've made, right? You've given great ideas of like, start small, get a small nut, right? Don't go big. What mistake have you made that you wish you could have learned from without having to make the mistake?
Okay. So the cool thing about what I've done is I've always just kept it moving, right? So I just make sure I learn from my mistakes and I don't replicate them. So I do it once and then I don't do it again. Um, the other thing is, like, while you're coming up, before you strike out on your own. So let's say you're number one guy that's working for you. Make all your mistakes on my dime. Don't do it on your own dime. Become so like this is cool conversation because I have a 19-year-old who's just finishing her sophomore year wrestling in college, right?
Okay.
And all of a sudden she's a woman and she knows what she's doing. And I'm like, listen, Abigail, you today are creating the person that you're stuck living with for the rest of your life today, right? And if I'm not the one to hold you to a high standard, then who else will? I'm the guy that loves you more than anybody. There's not a human on this planet that loves you more than I do. And so, like, what I would say is, like, as you're coming up in the business end, just remember that your ego is going to kill you. And you need to constantly try to kill yourself every single day in business to become the person you were supposed to be. And that goes for like kids growing up, students that are in college. Like, you can't be so stuck thinking that, oh, I'm this guy and I'm going to force the world around me to conform to my views. You got to be willing to adapt and change. And I felt that, like, in the beginning of my career, I tried to change a lot of people too. And now I'm willing to adjust a lot more than I did in the beginning. And I feel that finally, after 10 years, everything's gotten really easy. And if I would have known this 10 years ago, I probably would have been in like double the position now, you know? So
So now
just
you
be
just go make somebody else in double the position, right?
exactly. So don't be too stuck on who you think you are, and be willing to adapt and change and kill the prior you to become the better you.
Oh yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Sometimes like when I think about this podcast and who I can have on the podcast, it gets hard sometimes because running a school successfully is hard. And I don't want to have people on that, I'm like, well, they don't really do it that well. Right. Like, or they, so I appreciate you coming on because you are one of the ones that like has really changed the game around running schools. Like you have created massive opportunity for your people, which, like we said in the very beginning of the podcast, it's the number one, right? Like just doing it for you. Okay, that's cool. But can you replicate it in a way that you make like real careers for people so that they don't just teach for you and then turn 30 and have to go get a real job?
John Jock told me, I did the John Jock podcast about a month ago.
Okay.
And he told me, you are living like a samurai. A samurai is a servant. And jiu-jitsu is the samurai way. And we are here to serve people. And if you buy into what I'm selling and you help me and my family live the dream, then it's my duty to you as the samurai way in service to help you achieve your goals. And if you want to do this jiu-jitsu life, which we should live in this plentiful mindset where there's so many people in this earth, there's plenty of room for jiu-jitsu, and every single one of my black belts should be able to open their own school and thrive. And
if they want to.
What's that?
If they want to, right? If they have a great job and do their thing, great. That's great too.
Yeah, but it's all up to them, right? Like, right. I'm going to support whatever they want to do. They want to be an electrician and a black belt. That's freaking awesome, man. Like, let's do that. But you want to open school, we're going to make it happen.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. Cool, man. Man, tell everyone where they can reach you if they want to reach out to you for some advice. You gave really great advice. So I greatly appreciate it. It wasn't just like storytelling. So, because that is part of the podcast, is like, you have to be able to give someone like, hey, do this, or this is my experience. So where can people reach out to you?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is just Coach Casey 10 on Instagram. That's the easiest way. I'm always on that.
Cool. All right, man. I appreciate it. Guys, Easton.Online for all things Easton.Online created. This is the Black Belt Business Podcast. Thanks to Casey. We are going to be soon opening up a couple more slots for our affiliate coaching. Don't get confused, everyone. You're not going to be an Easton affiliate. Like, if you're a 10th Planet school, you don't have to like leave 10th Planet. You're just us on the consulting side. So if you are looking for that, for some help, hit us up. And we are going to open up some spots here pretty soon. So that's it. Thanks to Casey. Go hit him up. And thank you all for listening.